When my father first revealed his plans for my marriage, I stood frozen, caught in a silence so profound that even the ticking of the wall clock felt deafening. His words weren't simply news, they were a declaration, a decision already made, carved in stone before I had any chance to speak. I had always imagined my future partner as someone I'd choose myself, someone I'd fall in love with gradually, organically. But instead, he stood before me with certainty in his eyes, announcing that the woman he had chosen was significantly older, and that my destiny, it seemed, was tied to hers. I waited for the punchline, for a laugh or a wink that would dissolve this strange announcement into a jest. But none came. His face bore the solemn weight of obligation, of a promise long overdue. The realization dawned slowly, cruelly, that this was not a union forged from love, but one molded by debt, honor, and duty. I wasn't being asked, I was being offered, like a token of repayment for a favor once granted. My freedom, my choices, my voice had all been quietly bartered away. He spoke of a time when his friend, her father, had saved our family from ruin. And now, years later, my father believed this marriage would be a noble way to repay that kindness. He didn't see it as a burden placed upon me, but rather as a way of restoring balance. He saw honor. I saw shackles. I remember sitting alone in my room that night, my heart thudding in my chest, my mind spinning with questions I had no answers to. What about love? What about compatibility? Was my future now dictated by a past I had no part in? The thought didn't sting because of her age, it stung because of my voicelessness. I had become a piece in a game of loyalties and traditions. I wasn't a son with hopes and dreams, I was a vessel for reparation. Days passed, and then I met her. She entered the room quietly, dressed modestly, her presence calm, almost ethereal. There was no awkwardness in her manner, no attempt to prove herself or seek approval. She was composed, self-contained, like someone who had long accepted life's terms. Her eyes, though, held stories. They were ancient rivers that had seen many storms, yet continued to flow without complaint. And in them, I saw pain, but also strength, raw, quiet strength. There was no hostility in our meeting. Just a strange, lingering tension, two people, strangers, tied by a thread neither of us had chosen. I was curious about her, but also wary. How did she feel about this arrangement? Had she protested it, or accepted it as quietly as I had? Over time, the answers came in fragments. She told me little of her past, but what she did share was heavy with sacrifice. She had cared for her ill parents for years, setting aside her own ambitions to uphold duty. There had once been someone she loved, someone she had been forbidden to choose. Her voice was calm, almost resigned, when she said it, but I felt the ache behind her words. She had known heartbreak, yet wore it like a cloak of wisdom rather than a wound. In those early days, we lived like two strangers under the same roof, exchanging polite words and avoiding the deeper truths. But life has a way of unraveling walls. A sudden power outage one evening forced us onto the terrace, the sky lit with stars and the gentle rustle of night air around us. In that silence, I found the courage to ask, "Were you ever in love?" Her answer was a quiet whisper, "Once, but I wasn't allowed to choose him." I don't know why those words shattered something inside me. Maybe because they mirrored my own pain. Maybe because, in that moment, I realized she was just as bound by duty as I was. From then on, something shifted between us. We began to talk, not just about the situation we found ourselves in, but about ourselves. Our dreams. Our fears. Our regrets. What began as awkward small talk grew into meaningful conversations. I started seeing her not as the woman chosen for me, but as a person, intricately layered, bruised yet brave. She had a way of listening that made me feel heard for the first time in ages. There was no judgment, no interruption, just presence. And in those quiet exchanges, I began to heal. She saw me, not just as a reluctant participant in this union, but as someone. She noticed things. Like how I took my tea, the books I lingered over, the way I retreated into silence when overwhelmed. She responded not with grand gestures, but with subtle kindness. folding my clothes, leaving herbal tea on the table after a tiring day, reminding me to rest. No demands. No expectations. Just care. Slowly, the resentment I'd once harbored began to dissolve. I realized she wasn't my captor in this story. She was a fellow prisoner. And in that shared confinement, we found understanding. Our connection didn't bloom like a firework, it unfolded like dawn. Gradually. Softly. Each moment spent together carved a space of peace in my heart. Her presence calmed me. Her laughter, when it came, was rare and beautiful. She had known hardship, yet chose grace. She had lost her chance at young love, but never let it sour her soul. I remember watching her tend to the small indoor plants one day, sunlight streaming through the window, her hands gentle and sure. There was something heartbreakingly beautiful about the scene, how she poured life into things even when life hadn't always been kind to her. In her silence, she carried stories. In her calm, she held storms. One evening, she paused by my door, as if waiting. I invited her in, and for the first time, shared the weight I had carried, the confusion, the disappointment, the fear of not being enough. She listened, and when I finished, she didn't offer solutions. She simply reached out and held my hand, her touch light but grounding. That simple act unraveled me. After that night, I found myself seeking her presence, not out of obligation, but comfort. She became the first person I turned to after a bad day, the quiet listener to my chaotic thoughts. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, my heart softened toward her. I began to notice the things others wouldn't. The scar on her wrist she never explained. The way she lit up when discussing books. The silence that followed her name, as if people didn't know how to define her. I learned that she once dreamed of becoming a teacher. That she loved the rain. That she never forgot the birthdays of those she loved, even if they forgot hers. I brought her a scarf in her favorite color one day. She smiled, a rare, warm smile that reached her eyes. It was such a small gift, but it mattered. She read every note I left her with a tenderness that told me she saw not just the words, but the emotion behind them. This wasn't a love born of fireworks and fairy tales. It was a love nurtured in silence, watered by kindness, rooted in shared pain, and blooming in moments of quiet understanding. She taught me that love isn't about possession or passion alone. Sometimes, it's about presence. About choosing someone again and again, even when the world hasn't been kind. She didn't demand love, she offered it. She didn't expect affection, she gave it freely. And in doing so, she showed me how to love. Now, when I look at her, I don't see obligation. I see home. The kind of home that holds you gently when the world turns cold. The kind of love that anchors you not in grand gestures, but in stillness, in trust, in peace. And I find myself saying, quietly, honestly, wholly, thank you, Father. You gave me the woman I never would have chosen, but now, I cannot imagine my life